Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by the Jude Morrow. Good afternoon, good evening.
Hello. Good afternoon. How are you, Pete? Uh,
Wonderful.
just just as we have gone live, we've just had a visitor who's just left the room again.
So, oh, that, that just that just says how this is going to go. I'm looking forward to this to be a bit of
Oh no,
crack.
there is comings and goings and signs of doors. It doesn't seem to mean a lot. With me, I love signs. I love a good sign. I love a good warning sign or a good piece of guidance.
Mhm.
But it's funny how other people don't. As in, there is an interview going on in here. Do not come in, and that doesn't seem to work.
What's your favorite type of sign? Have you got a particular favorite?
Favorite sounds. I love the old buzzer from 15 to 1. The sometimes I do like panel discussions
Hmm.
because I would chat to other like autism groups, autistic groups, and so on, and I get invited to do like panel shows. Like, similar to this, but only there are a couple of other square windows with other people in them. And if people are saying something I don't agree with, I just want to press the big 15 to 1 buzzer.
It's like as host, you get to mute them and just kick them out of the room if you don't like them. So, so listen, tell everyone who are you, what do you do, and where you're from.
It was like Cilla Black. What's your
I
name? Where'd
always
you
like
come from? The
I
old
am Graham. It's like
the old blind date. Well, as Pete very kindly introduced me, my name's Jude Morrow. I am a social worker and author from Derry, but the chances are, and as that I'm not quite like you in that I am autistic. I went through mainstream school as an autistic child in Derry in the 1990s, and it wasn't an easy experience. I would love to say it was great. And although everybody had their hearts in the right place for me, I just felt different. I was just the wee boy that just sat and looked at everybody as opposed to really joining in, because that kind of feeling inside me of whether it was I didn't know how or I didn't want to accept that I didn't want to. It's just sort of a retrospective conflict that I have. But that's the story of my life as a child. And like all human beings, I reached 18, and although I spent the last maybe 14, 15 seconds saying about how I had so many social difficulties, I decided to pick a career that was perfect for me, and that I became a social worker. I went to McGee and graduated in 2012. And at that time, when I graduated, I thought that, well, I knew at that stage that I was autistic. I had been told. I wasn't told earlier on, but I was told, later on. I thought that being autistic was something for wee people, and they didn't grow up to be over 6 foot, reasonably good looking, and have beards. That just wasn't really the end thing. And then, because at 22, I'd done okay. I'd had a professional degree, I had a car, I had a house, I had pretty much everything going. And then I found out then in November of 2012 that I was going to be a dad. And during the pregnancy journey in Ethan's first few years, the traits and quirks and wonderful things that I didn't accept that made me me started to come back, like the reliance of routine, the um, just adversity to change, and wanting everything in life to fall in my favor and be on my own terms. And Ethan was born in July 2013. And kids, as you know, they grow up quickly and at different rates. And Ethan wasn't eating the same foods all the time, didn't want to do the same activities. And I just found it really hard to cope with, to the point where Ethan asked my mommy, his granny, why does daddy always look so sad? And that was the real kick up the backside that I needed to love and accept myself for who I am. I'd love to do the typical motivational speaker thing and say that was the exact moment that I saw the light and went on this journey and I'm enlightened and please buy all my tour tickets. That's not really what happened. I made a few more mistakes in between then and being the proud and happy autistic man that I am now. But one of my big goals was to have a book written by the time I was 30. So that question that Ethan asked my mommy, why does daddy always look so sad, became my debut book, which I first self-published last year because no publisher wanted it in May 2019. Then it did so well in the Amazon charts that I was picked up by a literary agent in California, who then pitched the book to Beyond Words Publishing, who's the publisher of The Secret. And amazingly, they published it again. It was published on the 7th of April of 2020. Sadly, there was nobody that could buy it because it was in bookshops and so on, and it kind of knocked the stuffing out of me. I lost my US speaking tour and so on. So it was released to a reasonably muted response, but that was just because of COVID and so on. So that's pretty much me in a handful of paragraphs.
Wow, I love it.
Thank you.
What is autism? Can you explain that to me?
It's a difference. It's a different way of being. It's not a disease. It's not something that needs fixed, that needs cured. It's simply a different way of being. And that, in the same way that some people have varying levels of eyesight, varying levels of hearing, and with being autistic, it's just a different way to perceive the world. That's not wrong. It's just our own way. It's just a different way of perceiving the world around us. And it, 1 in 59 is the accepted number for autistic people, generally, and from a lot of sources, that's the accepted figure. And we're not like the other 58. And the sad thing is with autistic people is that the 58 try to bring the other one, being me and other people like me, into line with everyone else. I mean, what is autism? It's a gift. It's a gift to be shared. It's not a burden to be pitied. It's sad that a lot of people use the word autism to describe like a classical learning disability. It's as I say, and I say it everywhere, at every show I do, every talk I do, every group I meet, every school I go on to, that it's just a different way of perceiving things. That isn't wrong. It's a different way of interpreting things. It's a different way of feeling and being. That's all it is.
Does it come with? So it comes with, it's like, something you get from under the Christmas tree. It's like does it come with batteries?
Does it come with an instruction manual? And I mean, Penny has been asking that for ages. Does it come with an instruction manual? And even my wee ma, God bless her, Emer, who I love, who comes with me and sits at the front row at some of my live stuff. Love you, mammy. Just thought I would do that while I'm here. She's still looking for an instruction manual, and this is 30 years on. So everybody is different. Everybody has, I'm not like other people. Everybody's different. We have a diverse enough society as it is, but I mean, that's why they call it the autism spectrum, as opposed to the autism continuum, because there's so many different traits and quirks and personalities, likes, dislikes, and so on, pretty much like every other human.
Do you have certain skill sets that stand out? I mean, certain, like a superpower.
My superpower is I can organize things to within an inch of their life. I've loads of superpowers. I love planning things, planning ahead. See the term "go with the flow." This boy does not do the flow. I like taking control and planning things. I'm not a controlling bully, I promise, but I just like. I like forward thinking, forward planning, and I can put my brain in various different places and come out with good outcomes for people. I think I'm a very blunt person. I'm very direct and receive information and in a blunt way. It works best for me. And I mean, being a social worker, a lot of people would say that being autistic is a social deficit or disability, wrongly of them. But for me, it's actually been a really, real advantage for me because I'm so literal and I have a very logical type of mindset. Like I work with people in crisis. I work in primary care now, which is people over 65, those with dementia, and nursing homes and so on. And it allows me to, look at a situation logically, dissect it, come up with a plan, and say, right, okay, this is what we're going to do, and it's served me well right up to now. Hopefully, I haven't put the blight in myself now. I've been doing the job now the last 8 years. So as far as superpowers go, I would say that's them all.
I'm curious there, would you say there that your weakness is your strength then? I mean, is that kind of where you fit in?
I would be. There are weaknesses on those things. I can be quite self-critical. I can be quite disappointed if there's any little glitches in any of my plans. I would advise anybody to not be within I know social distancing is in now, but don't be within a 20-meter radius from me if a transatlantic flight is delayed and you happen to be in the same airport as me. I don't really like change. I know not many people like change. It's a bit of a throwaway, but I just
Mm.
happen to feel it that bit more acutely than anybody else. So if I have an idea of how I want things to go and there's some sort of deviation or change within that, I certainly do feel it, and it can be quite hard to recover from. I'm not very good at getting over things very quickly.
Mm. I'm quite curious there because the language you're using is very kinesthetic. It's very touchy. You know, this is how I feel. This is, you know, is that? I mean, do you tend to have a strength towards, you know, because when you were talking there about planning, you talked about visualizing and you talked about seeing it and seeing how it all should work, and then you change senses there. I was just curious.
I would be quite a sensory being by nature. I like things to sound a certain way. I like things to look a certain way. I would be a visual type person anyway. I love a good road sign. I love a good map. I love things like that, and I wasn't always good at kind of talking about how I feel and see and interpret things, and I've just recently got into the habit of doing it, and it's a very very therapeutic process. I suppose I understand fully and properly now why counselling and psychotherapy and any related talking therapies work really really well, because it allows things like a flow, like a hose pipe from end to end, you know, to go from here out through here. Although some of the things that go from here out through here can get me in trouble sometimes. I can be prone to faux pas now and again, but you know what? It happens. Whoops.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So take us right back, young child of Jude. What are we meeting when we meet you?
What are you meeting? You're meeting a child that didn't like to meet other people, a child that clung to his mommy, and don't say, because you're a dairy man and dairy men are mommy's boys, or L apostrophe dairy men are mommy's boys. I didn't go to school every
Mm.
day. I didn't sleep very often. I only slept for a couple of hours a night. I still don't sleep that well. I only managed to eat, I think, from between I was maybe 3 or 4 up to I was maybe about 6 or 7. I only ate biscuits and milk and a glass of milk. That was it. I loved lining up my wee toy cars on the windowsill. I was a liner upper. I liked organising things, and if you tried to touch any of my stuff, then there would be a tsunami of unimaginable terror that would befall you.
Mm.
And back then, autism wasn't really a thing. I was just a naughty, spoiled little boy. Uh, Nobody really understood because my mommy had me when she was 25, and I mean, whenever I was 3 and 4, like she had never even heard of the word autism. She'd never
Mm-hmm.
heard, you know, it wasn't in her vocabulary. It wasn't in society's knowledge collectively. It just wasn't there. So I was just a child that she loved unconditionally, as did my daddy and my sister Emily as well. But they just knew I wasn't quite like them,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed that extra bit of love, care, attention, and reassurance. And it was a scary world for me, and I suppose it still is. But I suppose I have no choice but to put the big boy pants on and get on with it.
Is I was going to say there. I mean, how do you know how it was approached at first? I mean, I suppose at that time, as you say, just sort of considered naughty, you know, and sometimes
Yeah,
the idea is, well, we can beat that out of you, don't worry. you
I
know, but
didn't com- I didn't communicate very well. I wasn't a big chatter. Now you can't tell me to shut up, but back then nobody could really get me going. And I went to a play group that didn't meet my needs. I was asked to leave. Well, I wasn't asked to leave. My mommy was asked to take me out of it. And I went to a play group for mixed abilities, as it was then. And that would have had the likes of Down syndrome, your classical learning disability, and then other children like me. So I had assessments for special education schools. But
mm,
upon doing some psychological tests whenever I was young, that it was clear that I had the intellect, the academic intellect to
sure.
cope with the demands of mainstream school, although that I would need some social support in the form of a classroom assistant that followed me everywhere, other than the canteen, of which I didn't need anything in any way, or the toilet. So she followed me kind of everywhere. I had more one-on-one time, and I suppose had that bit more supervision and encouragement to join in group activities and games with other people in my class. But I was able to do the work. I was way ahead with reading and writing and stuff. I had my own writing and spelling group whenever I was in P1. There was, the way in primary school they assign you like a wee group, like
Mm-hmm.
the red group, the blue group, the green group, and then there was just me. I had my own wee group, and somewhere in my house I have like the spellings that I had to learn, and it was all mad words like orchestra and this is me in P1, and I was able to write them down and show them. I was able to write them and say the letters and go on. I learned to communicate more and more over time. So I did have the intellect, but I just sort of behaviorally and emotionally, I just wasn't wired like everybody else was.
Did you actually enjoy reading then and writing?
Still do. I absolutely love reading. I always have a book in my hand, or on Kindle. Whenever I was at school, my wee job, my wee area of the classroom was the wee library at the back. And eventually, whenever I'd read all the books in it, I would get books from other classrooms and everything. And it was just some progressive, lovely teachers that I've had over the years really kind of nurtured that passion in me of reading and writing and telling stories and writing stories and even participating in school plays. Like for now, even for public speaking and stuff like that I do, any events, conferences, whatever I do, I can only thank speech and drama and stuff like that for that too. So I suppose teachers did kind of play to my strengths, and I suppose like all of those kind of wee building blocks over the years, I suppose led to the writing career I have now. Well, the fledgling writing career I have now, if it ever recovers.
It sounds like the system worked for you. That there was a lot sort of kicked in to support you.
It did. I would never ever look back and criticize my time in school or my classroom assistants, who, by the way, did go to my book launch whenever it was first out. The problem that I had is that whilst it helped me, I have no doubt about that, it did prepare me for adult life. It did prepare me for third level education. But it was just the feeling of being different, my own issues of self worth and self esteem, and how I found it so difficult to mix, and it wasn't made easier by all the extra support I had to get or the extra time that I had to spend out of the classroom and so on. I suppose whilst it did help me to cope and manage as a big hairy ugly man, it did leave me with some definite self-esteem issues, which I did have to address in my mid-20s.
Do you think that was that in you already, or was it just exacerbated by the by the sort of this sort of constant presence beside you?
It was always in me. It was always in me. What I always say, autistic and aware, because I knew when people were saying things that were derogatory about me. Like there's one time I do remember, and myself and my mommy were talking about it not that long ago. Because I'm not great at waiting, my mommy had taken me to a pediatrician, a consultant pediatrician. This was years ago, 94, 95, that kind of time frame. And I was just really unhappy. I was like, I don't want to be here, And this, like, I didn't say that. I was just grumbling and throwing myself on the ground and so on. And a nurse came out and said, "Excuse me, can you control your child?" As if I could somehow not hear it or understand it. And even at like parent-teacher meetings or anytime my parents were called into the school about my progress, I always knew what they were saying. Like there was this automatic association that because I was autistic, I was somehow oblivious to absolutely everything that was going on around me and how people perceived me, which simply was not true.
I was going to say, would you have heightened senses almost, because you are perceptually aware?
It did. It really, really did. It made me more aware. It actually kind of made me a bit more anxious as well because I wouldn't be great at facial expressions. I wouldn't be great at interpreting, how people feel simply just by looking at them. But it does give you that kind of heightened sense of guard, and for me, it almost makes me kind of try to overcompensate
Hmm.
because I have like a nearly like an automatic negative bias that if anybody has a sad face, it's me that's caused it. It just seems to be in me. And I don't know if everybody's like that. Probably everybody else to a certain extent, but I would say I'm a wee bit overkill on it now and again.
Yeah, listen, I get told I have a you know, a grumpy resting face. It's like, unfortunately, my resting position is, yeah, it's like people going, what are you so angry about? It's like, no, that's just me. I'm cool.
I've actually had to work. I've done well, not like lessons. It's kind of different about how to give interviews and so on, because like normally this is how I'd look. If we were conversing, this is what I look like, and whenever my agent said to me that my book had been shared on Shirley MacLaine's website, which was great news, massive millions of subscribers, I was like, oh, that's great, thank you, and she was like, you know, as in, where's your reaction? Because you've got a book deal face, which I actually got a new one there. It was last week, so this is for book two. But don't worry, I'll be spamming your Facebook page whenever that
Good.
comes out, which will be next year. But my book deal face and my you've got a few weeks to live face are one and the same release. So whenever I'm on camera, I've learned to be a bit more animated and a bit more of a go-getter. It's not a falseness. It's
Yeah.
how I feel, but it's just kind of showing it more with my giant face.
I was going to say, you need to get a smile cut into your beard or something. So it just, your resting face is perfect. Oh dear. So, young fella, like, I mean, what was your ambitions for what you wanted to be when you sort of grew up as such?
Uh, I Whenever I was 16, I joined. It's a cross community youth group, Reach Across, and I suppose like most teenage boys, I didn't really know what I wanted to be whenever I grew up. Apart from the grandiose ones like an astronaut or a helicopter pilot or a cowboy, and just other kind of things like that. But whenever I was in my youth group and I became a leader and an assistant leader and then a full leader as the years went on, uh, that's when I realized that although I am not really a social butterfly slash networking mingler, that I was quite good at working with people because I can look at things so objectively. And
Mm.
that's whenever I pursued a career in social work and youth work, which is what I wanted to do. I thought that I was good at problem solving and chasing things up, like because it was a charitable voluntary organisation. It still is. It's still going. So shout out to them. I remember doing like funding applications for projects and stuff like that, and I'm like a wee Jack Russell, is that if I have something, I'll chase you up, I will hunt you down, and I suppose those things I realized, these are skills that I could make a full time living out of, and I did.
Mm. Where does that? I mean, the strength in that. Is it useful? Because you mentioned before about how it was useful almost to see things almost binary. It's kind of more set forward. And does that help in social work where you can cut through the emotional added layers and you get back to the facts?
Yeah, I can. Although some would argue that it would leave me in a better position to be a homicide detective, but a lot of the time, with emotion, especially in crises, it can. If someone is in crisis and there's a lot of heightened emotion that they're trying to communicate to someone else, someone like me,
Mm.
it can be very difficult to get to the crux of what is actually causing it because the automatic response whenever someone is going through a crisis are all the things that you shouldn't do, the likes of uh, short, rapid breaths, lots of tears, and so on, and giving people time to actually soothe and discuss the facts as something that I've built the skill up over years to be able to do, and I suppose I have a good filter of I can catch in my wee net, which is about an inch and a half behind my forehead, is that people can kind of machine gun information at me, and the net catches the wee useful things like mobility is not what it used to be, memory is not great, and stuff
Mm.
like that, and loneliness, social isolation. So those wee things kind of stick out. So I have the wee filter.
You mentioned there you're working with a youth group, and then now you're working with 65 plus. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
I mean, it's real, the broad spectrum, right?
Oh, aye, it is diverse, and it kind of happened by accident, really, because whenever I graduated from McGee, I joined a recruitment agency, and that's kind of where I ended up. I started off. I was working way up the road in an early years team, just outside Belfast, and then I got offered slots in hospitals and when community elder care teams. And I suppose that's where I've stayed, and then getting on contracts then through the trust. Then that's where I've stayed. Um, Whenever I was going through the degree, I thought I would have went into childcare. I thought it would, because given that I had a youth work volunteer background, but it's just not how it played out in real life. And that was how it happened.
Mm. Talk to me about recruitment agents.
Well, it's very hard to get on jobs, right away. So, like third-party recruitment agencies, what would happen, whether it's nurses or social workers or OTs, no matter what the health and social care professional it is, would sign up with a recruitment agency and they would find you somewhere. It's nearly like a bit of a rite of passage, they build up experience and, in short-term places for the likes of covering maternity leave or busy summer holidays or even winter times, just sort of a lot of wee short-term kind of contracts, just to kind of plug, gaps in public services. That's how I started out. That's nearly how everybody starts out, really. Mostly with social workers, anyway. I think with nurses and CPNs and so on, that is slightly different.
It kind of comes across like it would be quite satisfying to you because of putting people in the places and organizing and alignment and all the rest.
Well, it does work to a certain extent. Like I can't place people and put people in places where I solely want them because we have like human rights and consent, things like that.
Darn those human rights.
So I can't say, well, okay, Doris, you're just going to go to a nursing home over here, and you're going to stay home. It doesn't really work like that. But I suppose what I can do is learn to follow other people's leads and assess what they actually need, what their wishes are, and trying to come up with a plan in partnership with them. Not just it being the Jude Morrow show as such, as much as I would want it to be sometimes, but it's not always the way. And I suppose I've built a lot of good relationships with people over the years.
Well, tell us, do you take after your mother or father or someone else?
I would take after. I'm actually a mixture of both. I think
the best parts, of course.
I would be, and so some of the bad. No, I can't say anything bad about Mommy because I was talking about her earlier. I give her the big shout out, so we can edit that out or whatever. And you know what? Now that I've said that, you're probably going to keep it on. Thanks, Pete. So, I would. My daddy would be very methodical. He would be very kind of organized. He has a financial background, so I think I kind of get the good wee traits from him. And my mommy would be sort of a calm, soothing. She's like a human Japanese mood room for me. She's just the epitome of calm, strength, and resilient determination. So I take the good traits after them. Some of the bad things, my deep, deep love of sweet foods, I take after them, and my old obsession with exercise. My daddy would be a big fit freak, cyclist, runner, and all of that. So I would say I'm actually a perfect mixture of the two.
So you can eat a donut and run 100 meters in record time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. At the same time, don't even have to take a breath. I did marathons and stuff.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. That was kind of whenever I was saying earlier that whenever Ethan asked my mommy why I looked so sad all the time, that it wasn't the immediate kick up the backside that I needed to change. I thought, well, because my mood isn't great, I'm going to take up something. And normally people would take up like a soothing activity, like yoga, having a vision board, things like that occupy their time. But then I decided that I wanted to train to run a marathon. So no, I don't do things by half measures. Things like coin collecting or flower arranging or anything like that. I had to go for a really extreme hobby, which I did, and I would love to say that it was great for me. In a lot of ways, it was. I did lose weight and I did feel happier, but really, I just kind of physically and metaphorically ran away from my problems and my son for an entire year, and I spent a lot of time pounding the roads, the hills and the valleys, and the rain and the snotters blinding me, and it was quite an exhilarating time. But then after a while, I realised that I'd kind of retreated more. Somewhat, I'd become somewhat obsessed, that I'd nearly
Mm.
become addicted to exercise. And I suppose everything, like the biggest buzzword around the world is moderation, and I don't seem to do moderation very well. And I got obsessed with it. It took over my life, and I got lasting injuries from it. And that was then where I sort of realized, right, okay, I put myself through that instead of facing my own demons, skeletons, problems, issues, whatever you want to call them.
Talk to us about that. So, I mean, you were what? I'm trying to work out by 26 years of age, 25, 26? No,
25, yeah,
25.
25.
You had met your partner?
At this time, no, I hadn't. Penny came on just about after that.
Okay.
So at that stage, I was a single parent. I had Ethan. I had Ethan half the week. That's the way it's always been. So I was working in a community mental health team 30 miles from home. So back then, I was waking up very early in the morning, making my way to Coleraine, doing a day's work in Coleraine, coming back and then doing like an 18-mile run. And a lot of the time, Ethan stayed with my parents, and I packaged it up as, and I'm bettering myself, and I'm exercising, and I'm lifting my mood. And I suppose the consequence of that is that unfortunately I didn't see Ethan an awful lot. And that's, whilst yes, I have a medal for the marathon I did, but and I'll always have that, but I'll never really have Ethan's third year again. Whenever he was wee and cute and not as cheeky and stuff like that, he was not. He's still adorable now at 7. Don't get me wrong, but a wee 3-year-old with his wee dumpy run and his wee tiny teeth and that, and I kind of miss that, and it's a big regret for me. And I suppose that was the real lesson, that whenever I realised I wasn't going to get that back, and I had to come to terms with being autistic, because I didn't want to have any times where I would regret not having the time back.
Mm. I mean, that sort of almost swing, you get over commitment to something, I'm going to run a marathon, suddenly you go full tilt and into, yeah, all attention gets swayed to that. Is it
Yeah,
that balance, or do you think that was just a distraction technique purely?
it was a distraction technique. That's
Mm.
absolutely what it was. As a proud 25-year-old man, face your demons or get a class Facebook picture with a big medal around your neck from running a marathon. We'll go for this one. And that's what happened.
Mm.
I mean, I'd love to say that I had a healthy mindset about it, and that, I'm doing this for me and I'm doing this for my health and my benefit. And really, whenever I look at it, I just always wanted to portray this image that I wasn't weak. And I suppose I had to learn that I was never really weak anyway.
Were you out then as such about, autistic and no?
No, not then. I always knew that it was. I kept it quiet. Um, I didn't really tell anybody. I
Mm.
told a couple of people, a couple of very near, dear people to me, but it wasn't many. So that unless you were a lifelong friend or an immediate family member, nobody really knew. And it was only whenever the book came out that people got more awareness and knowledge of that I am autistic, and that brings along an even different conversation, because whenever I was meeting groups and so on and doing the tour and the book signings and so on, you get the usual kind of really infuriating things like, God, sure you don't look autistic. And I'd be like, well, what do autistic people look like then?
Mm.
Or there was people that would have said, I would never have thought that you were autistic, and I said, because I hid it with the skill of an Academy Award-winning actor for so many years, and I got so exhausted by it
Mm.
that eventually I had to just give up the ghost, so to speak.
You talked about your demons there. Can you share a bit about that?
I was so embarrassed with myself as a child that I just carried with me into adulthood. It was like there was two kind of separate entities. It was like whenever I was 18, it was like I stood out of my body and banished this kind of child version of Jude Morrow into the history books, that was placed in a wee box, wrapped up tight, put in storage, taken in a lorry, and kept somewhere really, really far away. And that wasn't a really healthy thing to do. It was, I suppose, I wanted to suppress and disassociate myself from my childhood, because that in my head, that little Jude Morrow caused me so much grief. It caused me so much strife and embarrassment, and strife and embarrassment to my parents. And that was the way I viewed it. And it was only after I had kind of got the more professional help from psychotherapy and CBT that that little boy, the little Jude, didn't cause me nothing but bother. But he had one victory after another, and I'm still him. It was like, I wouldn't liken it to dissociative identity disorder, but it's not too far off it, where I just kind of detached child Jude from me and just placed him so far away. But it's learning that, I am him. And even now, whenever I'm talking to people, or at events, or even speaking to people like you, is that I'm still him.
Yeah. Is it a perceived preservation that you think that disassociation took place?
It's a bit difficult. It was definitely intentional. I would love to say that my kind of brain did it without even realizing it, but I had done it completely. It was nearly like I had not like a ceremony or anything, but in my mind I was thinking, look, that was all in the past. Let's just forget about it. Let's just leave it there, and let's never talk about it, think about it, or relive it ever again. And that really wasn't the healthy thing to do.
I mean, going right back then, I mean, is there a time that you didn't feel stressed, out of place? It's
No,
just
no, because I just wanted so much to be like everybody else. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be part of the clique, or the gang, or the lads, or whatever it may be. I just really wanted to be that person. I wanted to be like the person that could join in, contribute, and cooperate. And I didn't like the idea of being a loner. But over time, and even now, I just accept it a lot more. I'm just different to everybody. And I wouldn't say that a lot of people put pressure on me to join in, but at the same time, I kind of put pressure on myself more than anything.
so in terms then of the sort of, the book and the sort of almost the coming out thing, and just it is what it is and that's it, and
Yeah,
no more. How did that feel?
it wasn't an instant thing. I know when you say like coming out, I wasn't like, I know I was in,
Yeah.
right. I know I know I was in, but it wasn't like an instant kind of relief, because it's hard to explain, because I knew it wasn't like an instant moment where I said, I'm autistic. Whew! It didn't really work like that. It's kind of an ongoing journey and process that I'm still very much on, and it's going to be a lifelong one. It's not one where I just put up a big post and it goes viral saying I'm autistic, deal with it, and then that's it over. I mean, everybody learns more about themselves as they get older. People acquire wisdom with age, and that's no different with me. I've acquired some wisdom somewhere along the line, but I suppose it's trying to interpret it and understand it in my own way too.
It's an interesting thing. So you're saying, acquiring wisdom with age, which I think is a great point. I mean, looking back now, how would you handle you in the past? Is there anything you could do to help, or
I would have loved to have talked to somebody like me, even for somebody to say, things will be all right.
yeah,
You'll get a half decent job. You'll drive a half decent car. You'll meet a girlfriend who's half decent looking. I'm only joking, Penny, if she can hear me.
Jesus.
Right,
This is
but
where the interview gets cut.
but I suppose a lot of people worried about me. Like my parents did, my teachers did. They thought, what's life going to be like for Jude when he's older? But I
Mm.
thought that too. I thought that myself. I wasn't like
Yeah.
not knowing what was going on around me. I had the same fears as the professionals and family who were involved with me. I had the
Mm.
same things, and I suppose that's why I love going on my own speaking tour and stuff, because I'm doing what I would have loved to have had for myself. For people, in their teens and young people, they know that they can grow up to be happy and successful and have everything in life that they want, and the only kind of condition to that is that they accept and love themselves for who they are, and not try to walk with the rest of the herd.
Mm.
I wish I knew that younger. I wouldn't have made so many mistakes, and I would say every single mistake I made in my life, and continue to do so, but maybe on a much smaller scale, was all down to seeking approval and acceptance. And if I had have accepted myself, I wouldn't have done those things.
Mm. And there is an element, I suppose, everyone comes across some of those traits as well. It's that it's Jesus part of growing up. If
Yeah, it is, and I mean, with if we're comparing like school experiences, it's one of those things that not a lot of people know what it's like to have a classroom assistant or an SNA, as they're called in the south, sit beside them all the time. I mean, other people, funny enough, don't seem to think it's a big deal,
mm.
but it really, really is a big thing. Like even like whenever you're sitting there and you look to your left and you're thinking, why do I have someone with me all the time? It's not something you can easily just shake, and it's almost as if whilst I got all the help and I loved all my classroom assistants all the way through the years, all the way through primary and secondary school,
Mm.
it does leave you on a back foot. It does, where to the rest of the class you are the guy that has someone with them all the time. So you're at an immediate kind of disadvantage.
Yeah. Well, that's it, I suppose. I mean, and whether or not other people are watching or commenting or whatever, but still, even in your own perception, it's different.
Yeah, it is different, and I know a lot of people go through challenging times in school, and I don't speak for every single autistic person or every single person that went through a difficult time at school. I can only speak it from my own experience, and that uh, pretty much if I can do it, anyone can.
Mm.
And believe me, anyone can, because I I I I didn't have an easy time at school, definitely not, and a lot of it, yeah, I'll have to admit, was my own doing, and some of it was from born from people whose hearts were in the right place, trying to help me, and so on. It wasn't easy, and there was no kind of winning for anybody, because I
Mm.
couldn't have done without the help. I definitely couldn't have, but having it meant that I was somewhat of an easy target for other people.
I was going to say, were there any instances of bullying or, you know,
Oh, there definitely was. There definitely was. It doesn't take much to get a reaction out of me, and I'm not really one to play it cool, and my face often gives away how I feel. So all it took is for a bit of childish horseplay or whatever to send me really, really angry sometimes. And I suppose whenever I was a teenage boy, I had a lot of buttons, and a lot of my classmates had a lot of fingers. So it was never really a good combination.
I know what you mean, but that could also be taken wrong. So, no, it is. Yeah, it's intriguing that and unfortunately kids will be kids too. And
Oh,
it's
kids will be kids. Like, I mean, we humans, like, if you look at the whole animal kingdom, I mean, we are the worst by far.
mm,
For It's funny. Ethan and me went to before the world collapsed. Ethan and me went to Belfast too, and I saw a really interesting thing. We went up to the chimpanzee house,
mm-hmm,
right? And the zookeeper threw in um, like a big bunch of bananas, right? And there was about maybe 8 or 9 of them there, but they all took one each. That would never happen with a bunch of Waynes. It would never ever happen. And I mean, Ethan had said, "Wow, because the guy was throwing out the bananas or whatever it was they're feeding to him." And I asked, "Do they do that all the time?" And he said, yes, even in the wild they will. They know how to share, like animals in general know how to share, whether it's chimpanzees, whether it's the falconry, whether there's food left in, they'll all share it. And they'll all kind of cooperate for the greater good. It only seems to be humans that can't really do that.
It's interesting whether it's greed or one-upmanship or ego or whatever it is.
We're egotistical creatures. I mean, absolutely, we are. You know.
How is your ego?
Oh, how is it? You've caught me here, Pete. How is it? Bruised at the minute because I feel a bit selfish because it came along. I felt selfish by feeling very hard done by that the only award that I would win is the worst possible time to ever have a book released. I mean, it wasn't the publisher's fault; it was nobody's fault. The books were printed. We had a date. We went through all the copyright and all the editing. The release date was set long before Christmas, and there was no backing out. And it just sort of came upon us in March. So I suppose now and again, ego-wise, I would love to be modest and say I try not to let my ego take over, but sometimes it just does, unfortunately. And I know I had one whenever I realised how bruised it was, whenever my own book release was so muted. And for the second book release now, which will be next year, I'm hoping that nothing comes in the way, whether it's another pandemic or a nuclear war or airlines all going out of business, or I mean, whatever possibly worse can happen to dampen my fledgling writing career.
So for the next book launch, you're going to double down on the fireworks?
Oh, absolutely. Double down on the fireworks? What? Triple down on the fireworks? And the champagne, and the support acts, and the stadium, and...
How about a couple of chimpanzees all gently eating bananas too?
Aye, and they'll all take one each, and even with the glasses of champagne, they'll all take one each, because they share, because they know how to cooperate, and we humans don't, which is sad. The human race, though, it's funny that Einstein, another fellow autistic person, a long-term member of the same club as I, with atomic structure and the nature of reality, creating like nuclear fission, like the split of the atom within general relativity, is that was used, for power initially in theory, but then all of a sudden somebody had the bright idea to make it into a bomb. And nearly every good invention that's mostly created by autistic people, the likes of like Tesla and Thomas Edison, and even forms of art and sculpture, it all seems to be turned by everyone else to be used against other people, which is quite sad too, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. You mentioned a lot of names there. I mean, what is the sort of Hall of Fame for, is there an autistic Hall of Fame for people who've come up with some amazing stuff?
Well, there is, because the reason is that a lot of autism is normally categorized by obsessive and repetitive behaviors, but they're just passions, like normal people have. Let's say Mozart and Michelangelo. Like, imagine someone saying to Michelangelo in the 15th century, "Nah, put the paintbrushes down. Nobody cares about art." It's that kind of like that passion and that drive that other people would view as obsessive. That passion has changed the world, and virtually every single art form, every single medium, every single scientific and medical discipline has shaped the world. I mean, Pete, without us, where would the world be? Still living in caves, spearing fish, laying bear traps, who knows? And surely with the COVID vaccine, if and when it should arrive, will probably have been created by an autistic person. Just you see, I said it first.
Has the universe ever thanked you properly?
Not yet. But we don't want thanks. We don't want the thanks. We're happy with some quiet smugness, internal smug.
Just don't tell your face. What's your obsessive and repetitive behavior?
I have a few. I was always obsessed with reading and writing. I always was, and I've turned that into writing. And even with with speaking now. Everywhere I've been, and I have a couple of rituals that nobody knows why I do. I don't even know why I do them. Like, it's funny that anywhere I go to speak is that I always ask to get on the stage first, so I know how many steps I can take from the center of the stage, left, right, forward, back, and scanning across the room to see if I can look at everybody from where I stand and from where I say certain things. And like, it's almost like whenever I speak, I count and walk at the same time, so I can keep all my steps. And it's a really military operation. It's quite complicated, but I can't not do it. If someone says you can't get on the stage before you speak, I'd be like, so I would be like that. I'm very, very particular about what routes I take when I drive. I avoid certain roads, certain junctions, certain places, especially ones that I don't feel comfortable parking outside. So a lot of kind of small things that people take for granted can overshadow my kind of daily functioning. But a lot of it's pretty minor, really. I try not to let it hold me back too much.
I mean, is there emotions attached to that, or previous experiences, or is it just as,
No,
I mean, avoiding
no,
junctions or something else?
no, I can't help it.
Mm.
I don't know why.
Mm.
I've never had a car. I was going to say I've never had a car accident. I've never had a serious car accident. I've never like fallen off a stage or anything. I've never. I don't have any significant traumas in my life that influenced my behavior and how I think. It's just this kind of underlying need for order and being in one and in touch with my surroundings, and I want to immerse myself in it. Or if I feel something is very complicated for me, to avoid it as much as I can. Although a lot of it can be seen as pretty irrational, but I suppose I consider my own peace as opposed to telling myself internally to wise up all the time.
How is that inner chatter?
Pardon?
How is your inner chatter, inner critic, inner?
My inner chatter doesn't stop. My inner chatter is constantly on the go. My brain only goes at two speeds, and it's the speed of light, which is 186,282 miles per second, or stop, sleep.
And is
So
it one voice or multiple?
one, my own, and that's it. Where it's like I do a running commentary of everything I do. It's odd, and I would still speak to myself a lot. See, in the car, jeez, I chat away to myself in the car. I chat away to myself, and there's there's a common autistic trait. It's called echolalia, which is repeating things that people have said under my own breath. It's I don't know why I do it. I don't realize I do it. Sometimes Ethan points it out to me. Said, "Why did you whisper that again?" And I'm like, "No, never. Shush." It just happens. But I think that's the inner chatter spilling out, because there's so much of it that it just busts out through the mouth. Because if Ethan says, "Can I have a banana, please?" If I go, "Can I have a banana, please?" It just comes out. Like it's like a processing thing. It's like if I say it, it sort of ingrains it in between the ears.
In terms of it's interesting. If you were sort of brainstorming, you were trying to come up with something. So, say for example, the book. Do you sort of sow the seed? Do you have to sort of sit and basically let it all process through your brain, or do you have to spill it all out, or what is your creative process if you have one?
My creative process is assigning a start, a middle, and an end. Like with my with everything I write it in order, from start to end. Like I know some writers, if they have a great idea, they'll write around that particular idea, whether it's late on in their book, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, whatever it is. But with everything, I write everything in absolute chronological order as it comes to me. With the first book, because it's like a memoir, it has like a story arc. Like a start, a middle, like childhood, adulthood, and then the kind of change. And I'm not giving any spoilers and saying that I don't die at the end or anything. But even with the second book now, which is just finished, the kind of like the writing process, is that it's not a memoir book. It's not. It's going to be called Loving Your Place in the Spectrum, and it's going to be like a collection of short stories of like questions that I've been asked throughout my own speaking turn events, and given my own interpretation and allowing a medium for other people to share their stories within the pages of the book as well. But I wrote that each chapter in order from 1 to 12. Uh, I didn't do like one chapter early on, another one after that. I didn't write like chapter 8 first, then chapter 3, then chapter 1, then chapter 5. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's kind of maintaining that kind of order and clarity to my kind of writing process, to have like a definite flow. The creative process, it's not like a big cloud. I try and catch it and compress it and stretch it out into one big long linear path to walk from start to end with as little twists and turns as I can possibly afford.
And book writing process, I mean, is that something you inherently had, or is it something you had to learn about or train to do, or?
No, it just kind of came out on paper over the winter. The book took 100 days to write, and it was just an hour at night, so 100 hours. It's a short book, like you could read it on a short haul flight, really. And I never had like any creative writing classes or anything, or I suppose just reading books and writing wee short stories here and there, and I suppose retaining my own voice in it, because I'd just be afraid of losing my writing style and what I'm used to if I were to take like writing lessons or classes or anything like that. So it did come pretty naturally to me, to be fair.
How would you describe your style?
It's very, it's honest. It's brutally honest. I don't really pull any punches for anything I like or dislike. If I made a mistake, I can own it and say, yeah, I did that. I made a right royal mess of that. And I suppose it's from a lot of feedback and reviews, a lot of people found quite refreshing, because I don't use being autistic as an excuse or anything. Have I treated people badly before? Yes, I have. Have I made mistakes? Yes, I have. But it was never because I was autistic. It was the fact that I couldn't accept it, and I would have deflected blame onto other people and refused to take responsibility.
It's great to see, that you've. I mean, have you enjoyed the process? Do you enjoy doing it, or is it more?
I do love doing it. I do love doing it. I do love writing. I do love getting my thoughts down on pen and paper. I always keep one nearby, and I always write down things, just wee ideas here and there as they come to me, and whether it's for blog posts, articles, interviews. I'm a big believer in preparation. And I say this in nearly every podcast interview, in that, I mean, this is your first time interviewing me, but this is my third time that you've interviewed me, because I've rehearsed this already today, twice.
Well,
I've meticulously prepared. Do not mistake me for a natural, because I certainly am not. Like, I do my homework. I would do great in like intelligence agencies or something, because I kind of find out what the style of interviewing is and see if I can fit into it and try and forecast what kind of questions that you might ask. So I spent a good bit of the day actually doing that.
what's your favorite question
that I've ever been asked?
Yeah.
Like, ever?
Yeah, sure.
I'll tell you what, this is a cracker. Brace yourself. So whenever I do the live shows, it's always the kids that ask the most questions every time. And of course, because it's going to be a child answering the question, this is going to be funny. And I explained, like, I became a social worker and so on. And a wee girl puts her hand up in the front row, and I said, right, go ahead. And she says, do you know the way you're a social worker? And I said, yeah. And she said, are you like the dog warden, but only for people? And I was like, that is a brilliant way to look at it. No, but I can see why people think that way. Because, I mean, everybody hates them on social workers. Like, I mean, social workers in general don't have a fabulous reputation, whether it be in the media or in society circles. But it's like, are you like the dog warden, but only for people? I was like, I never thought of it like that.
Classic.
That's a classic. It's brilliant. Like you couldn't make it up. No, could not make it up.
I
But
now have a
that's
vision of you
definitely
with
the
a pole and a big net. Going in.
the child catcher from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Just,
But I mean, whenever people say, what do social workers do? A lot of them will think, oh, they go around and take the kids off the people that they don't like, which absolutely isn't the case. It's very, very difficult procedure and legislative policy to remove a child into care. So, I mean, to be asked that, it just gets a real summary and an insight into what her process of what being a social worker is, and it's not too far removed from what most people believe anyway.
what I mean, what's your joys in the job? What do you most enjoy?
What do I love? Um, I, I love being able to really properly care plan for people, and to work with people to find solutions that work for people, to kind of remove as much negative emotion from a situation as possible. Although I'm not really a networky mingler, so to speak, but what I am is a planning go-getter, where I say, well, what about we do this, that, and the other, and it will be done. And it's just kind of watching maybe plans kind of come together and so on, for people and achieving good results for people. Uh, I really kind of love that. It's kind of like a wee buzz that I get that doesn't really stop. I suppose it's the same kind of feeling I suppose surfers get. The buzz. It's like it might seem like a bit of a nerdy buzz, but it keeps me going. It keeps me going in the career and has avoided me getting the 7 year itch because we're now in year 8.
And that's not just COVID. That's
uh,
what I mean. I was going to say you must see all sorts from the social working side. I mean, your general perception and of the public as such. Do you maintain a healthy standard, or do you have to? Because I'm sure you see the good, the bad, and the ugly.
oh, I've seen the good, bad, the ugly, and even the unspeakable over the years, and it can be very hard to
Mm.
disassociate. And it's one thing that I do find hard is sometimes not kind of taking the emotional toll of the job home with me. And I suppose it's just like keeping myself busy. And I suppose that's where the writing comes in, is where it can be channeled kind of into something, obviously without breaking people's confidence, but
Mm.
kind of channeling the negative experience and sitting down and using that kind of energy to write. Like a lot of the creative arts are born out of hard times. Like look at all the love ballads that made people millionaires. Like I mean, all the greatest love songs ever written were written by penniless musicians that didn't really have the same raw emotion into their songwriting as they had as whenever they had a solid gold mansion in Beverly Hills. So I suppose I use that kind of feeling to kind of prop myself up and write and keep it going. It's just kind of the energy channel.
That's interesting. There's a saying I quite like is your voids are your values. And I get that. When people talk about, especially with Fire in the Belly, talk about burning desires, and I had a query or question whether do you have to go through the hard stuff to basically to be able to pivot for the current word of the week, but pivot then to the other side. So you see the dark side, but that then, as you say, the love ballad, you got to be heartbroken to write the ballad.
Not necessarily. I think people can educate themselves. I know life experience is important, but it's funny that a lot of people that I thought even when I was training to be a social worker, people would say, "Well, I grew up in a working class background, so now that I've grown up and been made a success of myself, that you somehow know the crack more than the general populace," which isn't necessarily true because um, I mean, I wouldn't have said I came from the most working class of working class backgrounds, and it still didn't make me not understand the needs of society. I didn't feel detached from reality because I wasn't from a family where 19 children slept in one room and I didn't have a pair of shoes till I was 12. So I'm not necessarily sure that
Mm.
it's always vital to go through bad life experiences in order to become a more enlightened person. Anyone can educate themselves if they look in the right places, mainly off the internet, mainly in libraries. There's a lot of classic books out there which are sadly going to be forgotten up the libraries. So, so people can educate
Mm.
themselves and read stories of others and understand what hardship actually is. Although it is somewhat of an advantage going through those things, but
Mm.
I don't believe it's an absolute must in a lot of cases.
A while ago there, you mentioned, saying if basically if you could do it, anyone could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Because I would say, like many other people, that nobody in the history of education hated school as much as me. And I didn't think I would get through it. Not a lot of people did think that I would get through it, but somehow I did. I got there in the end. And I was written off by a lot of people for various reasons, all the way through school. And I did get there. And if I can, absolutely anyone can. It's all down to applying oneself and trying to reach your own targets and goals. And although I didn't really have a lot of direction in what I wanted to do until I was maybe 15, 16, or even afterward, I suppose it did come at some point. And a lot of I played to my own strengths, and anybody can to make a success of themselves.
So you left school. Did you go straight to university? I can't quite
Yeah,
work out the timeline.
yeah. I left school in 2009, upper second 2009, and then I started McGee to, September 2009 and graduated in July 12. So that
And
was my
were you
timeline. Yeah.
flying solo at that point, or did you continue? Did you have care or the assistants?
No, I flew solo because whenever I was at university, whether it was legislation or policy or whatever it may be, the with uh, like secondary school, I had to have that support.
Hmm.
But kind of after that, I didn't really because technically I was there voluntarily.
Right. Okay.
So I didn't really have that, but there were advantages to maybe third level education because I was able to kind of come up with my own timeline, my own study plan, my own library plan. Didn't always stick to it, mind you. I did party now and again. I'm not a complete bore, but I did do much better in third level education than I thought that I would do. I was so hungry to do it. I really, really wanted it. And I suppose I kind of had to adapt to it. I wasn't always good at adapting, but I seemed to manage really, really well in it. But I did tell my course tutor at the time, and that was the first real person that I did tell. And I suppose that was the kind of start of my inklings to use what other people would perceive to be my shortcomings to my own advantage, which is mainly be the kind of logical way that I work.
That's interesting. So you're taking your learning style on board, and you really brought yourself through it.
Yeah, I did. Uh, we have a little visitor to the room. Do you want to say hello to Pete? That's lovely.
Ah, yeah.
saying, saying hello to Pete. I know Pete. We had a 2 hour slot, but I think we might have to cut a little bit short.
No worries. No worries.
Are you? How long are the podcasts normally?
It
Just
really
about 2 hours.
depends. Yeah, so it depends. Some people are 60 minutes, some people are 2 hours. It's whatever's right for people. So there is no
Yeah,
rights and there is no wrongs.
yeah, because we have some hoverers here, don't we? We have some hoverers, so we can edit that wee bit out. Another wee question or two, and
No
then we.
worries. Um,
Sorry,
I was going to say, so a couple of things there. I mean, is there any sort of heroes or inspirational people that stand out for you?
my parents. They stood by me no matter what. They would not allow me to get fixed. They would not allow me to view being autistic as a limitation, and they supported me absolutely no matter what. They were there. They were in my corner 110% all the time, and if that's not a hero, if that's not heroes, should I say, then I don't know what is.
Hmm. No, that's powerful. Guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. Oh, guilty pleasure. I have so many. So many. Penny, what are my guilty pleasures? What do I really love that's kind of annoying or strange? Other than Penny. I love the Titanic. I love steam trains. I love Subbuteo. I go to a Subbuteo club every Monday night, Derry City Table Football Club, where it's a bunch of amazing guys, middle-aged men, who all meet up once a week to talk about how our mutual love of the game. It's great. So Lily, this is like the BBC cut. I know it never. I know it never works. It never works. Well, at least we got a good hour out of it here. We'll run that one again.
No worries. Well, just a quick one. I mean, fire in the belly. What does it mean to you? What is your fire in the belly?
My fire in the belly is to educate and show people that being autistic is absolutely fine. It's for too long. I think people like me, children like me, grew up with a medicalized kind of language that autistic people can't make eye contact, can't make friends, have obsessive and repetitive behaviors. The bottom line is that we're just not like you. But that's fine. And that's a difference that should be celebrated as opposed to an omen or burden that needs to be fixed by anybody. And people that still hold this belief is one for me that's worthy of pity and one that I hope that I can change.
Nice, I like it. Final question. You mentioned sweets. What's your go-to on the sweets?
I love Lindt chocolate. I absolutely love it. I always have a stash that I have to hide because people steal it on me. I'll not mention any names, Ethan. I am
plain dark chocolate flavored.
Milk chocolate, dark chocolate's a no-no unless it's in desserts. I am a sucker for sugar-free carbonated drinks. I've so many. I don't like hard-boiled sweets. No, I don't like those. I'm just a big chocolate person. I mean, and you know what? It's funny that I was such a fussy eater as a child that whenever I grew up, I eat everything now. There's still some things, sweet corn and cucumber. They're still big no-nos, and prawns are big no-nos for me. It's just the kind of texture that I don't like. But I suppose everybody has their own likes and dislikes.
2 final questions I'm going to sneak in. 1, book recommendation, and 2, tell us about your own book and how people can get in contact.
What is my favorite book of all time? My favorite book of all time is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Robert Louis Stevenson. It's my favorite. I love Robert Louis Stevenson. He's my favorite. Remember reading his books as a child. And with the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I actually own a first edition copy of the book from 1882. Please don't ask me what I paid for it because my mommy's going to be watching it, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my prized possessions, and my book, Why Does Daddy Always Look So Sad, is available from all major online retailers, Amazon, Book Depository, and other outlets, and you can even order signed ones through my Jude Morrow author Facebook page. Just drop me a message. I am a black belt in responses, and for anybody that wants to speak to me and reach out to me about anything, whether it be questions about the book or coming to visit your group, my email is judemorrowbooks@gmail.com, and I respond to everything personally. So please get in touch. I love hearing other people's stories as well as telling my own.
Jude, it's been awesome. You're a busy man. I'll let you crack on, and thank you so much. It's been great fun.
You're a legend, and you know what? I'll owe you this time, right? I will owe you. If there's anything else I can get involved in, anything I can do, give me a shout. I say yes to everything. So
you might regret that, but yeah.
Oh no, I won't. Any excuse for a slobber, Pete? I'm there, man. I am there. So thank you very much. It is getting busy and rumbly in here. So I mean, it's not goodbye. It's see you later, to be continued, because I will be adding you to the media outreach list for book 2.
Awesome. Look forward to it, Jude. It's a pleasure.
Thanks a million. I'll speak to you soon, man.
Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.